Romeo, Juliet. Juliet, she failed to say. When he put his arms around her, he said, Julia, you know you're my flame. You give me fever. When you kiss me, fever. When you hold me tight, fever in the morning, fever all through the night.
Captain Smith and Pocahontas had a very mad affair. When her daddy tried to kill him, she said, Daddy, don't you dare get my fever. When he kissed me, fever. When he hold me tight, fever in the morning, and fever all through the night. Everybody's got the fever. That is something we all know. Fever isn't such a good. Fever started long ago.
Listen to my story. Here's the point I'm trying to say.
6 up on fever. Give you fever.
Well,
be it Fahrenheit or centigrade, they give us fever. When you kiss them, fever when you live in love. What a wibbly way to burn. And what a lovely way to burn. What a lovely way to burn. Yeah. What a lovely way to burn. What a lovely way to
by Thomas O'Leary from A Prayer for Everyone. Showtime. Life's a rehearsal for life. If you're dead, you failed the screen test. But don't be discouraged. The role is still living. Someone is playing you right now. Playing you poorly, perfectly, breaking a leg. And here's the sampling of said same Showtime Semitic poem. Life, Halavai, is a dress rehearsal for a Bubba Maisa. If your brain dead, you won't have seen that yesterday the headline in the New York Times, U.S. will allow drilling for oil in Arctic Ocean. Obama move is a blow to environmentalists who fear a spill. Wow. Now that's an understatement. That's an understatement. From the people who brought you deep horizon well, over the event horizon, extinction 2112, with 2020 hypo hindsight. It's a shell game in the Chukchi Sea. Shell tried to drill in 2012 at the harmonic convergence, but there was no harmonic convergence in the Chukchi Sea, and Shell had an accident. Started the biocide that only now is just beginning. Shell is given the permit. Drink the Fukushima Kool-Aid if you think that makes sense. Like the MMS was the regulator, the Corexit regulators for BP. That's beyond the pale. Corporate criminals. BP, beyond the pale. The corporate criminals. If you're dead and you're the Grateful Dead and it's the 50th reunion of Woodstock, let it come, break it down, come to Jesus, work and be saved. You fail, but you're too big to fail. In your own story, my perfect audience, you're way too big to fail. Way to go. There's a 2-ply foreplay with 6 degrees of separation on the 8-fold origami path. It's all going on. But don't be discouraged. The role is reversed. The curse is reversed. You flip the script. You practice intention and intuition above and beyond the call of duty and booty. It's all working out. Acts the Sadguru within. Is this working out? How is this working out?
A dream, I stood beneath an orange sky. Yes, I had a dream, I stood beneath an orange sky, with my brother standing by. My brother standing by. I said, brother, you know, it's a long road we've been walking on. Yes, it is, you know, brother, it is. Such a long road we've been walking on. Oh brother, oh brother. And I had a dream, I stood beneath an orange sky, with my sister standing by. With my sister standing by. I said, here is what I know now, sister. Here is what I know now goes like this. In your love, my salvation lies. In your love, my salvation lies. In your love, my salvation lies. In your love, in your love, in your love. Oh, but you know I am so weary. And you know my heart's been broken now. Sometimes my mind is too strong to carry on. Too strong to carry on. But when I'm alone, when I've thrown off the weight of this crazy stone, when I've lost all care for the things I own, that's when I miss you. That's when I miss you, you who are my home. You are my home now. Here's what I know now, brother. Here is what I know now, sister, goes like this. In your love, my salvation lies. In your love, My salvation lies in your love. 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 My salvation lies in your love, in your love, in your love. Your love now. A dream, I stood beneath an orange sky with my brother and my sister standing by. With my brother and my sister standing by now. With my brother and my sister standing by.
This is from Max Blumenthal's Goliath. It's called The Forbidden Tour. In April 2009, a tour guide at Yad Vashem risked his job to challenge the nationalistic perspective the museum administration and its state-level overseers were attempting to promote. While most guides took tourists from the darkened halls of the museum toward the giant cattle car installed on its grounds that seems to hang in the air, pointing toward Jerusalem, the spiritual center of the Jewish state. Itamar Shapira, a former combat soldier turned human rights activist, led his group in a different direction. In an interview 1 month after the incident, Shapira told me that when he guided the visitors out of the museum, he ushered them to the hillside and pointed them to the ruins of a village clearly visible in the valley below. Before the visitors was Deir Yassin, the site of the massacre of over 100 Palestinian civilians during the 1948 war by the Stern Gang, a right-wing Zionist militia. Today, it is home to the Kfar Shaul Medical Health Center, an Israeli mental institution where tourists who suffer from the religious delusions known as Jerusalem syndrome are treated. Surrounding the mental hospital are the crumbling homes that once belonged to Deir Yassin's families, who now live in refugee camps across the Arab world. By the end of the official tour, Shapira told me, Yad Vashem leads you in an impressive manipulation, maybe an emotional climax. You go down into the ground until you get to the lowest place, Auschwitz. Then you go up. The museum goes up from the ground and you are looking over the battlefields of our independence war. And it doesn't specifically say before you go out. You pass through David Ben-Gurion declaring independence. It has connotations to people saying this is our independence, this is our place, thanks to the establishment of the state. In Shapira's alternative tour, visitors were forced to acknowledge the toll Israel's foundation took on the indigenous Palestinian population. I was saying to them that from this war, many of the Israelis who participated in it were coming from the Holocaust with no families, fighting the Palestinians. Many of them did not know where it was, where they were, and they just had nothing to lose, he explained. This was their shelter, they thought. On the other hand, I was saying that on these same battlefields, massacres happened of Jews massacring Arabs. And this was the root of the refugee problem of the Palestinians. Shapira added, I thought this was the best way to end the tour of Yad Vashem, to say we have passed through our suffering, and now we have to acknowledge that in this place there are other sufferings, and if we don't understand them, we will have no political means of resolving them. This was the best way. What do we remember about the Holocaust, and how do we apply it later? Unfortunately for Shapira, right-wing members of a group from the Jewish settlement of Efrat overheard his presentation and complained to Yad Vashem administrators. They said, how can you say this? No one cared that I talked about Arabs besieging Jerusalem, fighting for our independence, he recalled. The last sentence about the refugee problem, this was when they protested. How can you justify the violence of the Palestinians? People think acknowledging their suffering supports their violence. Shapira was summoned to a hearing where he was instructed by the museum's directors to excise any mention of Palestinian suffering from his tour. When he refused, they fired him, accusing him of politicizing the Holocaust by likening it to other historical events. Yad Vashem would have acted unprofessionally had Itamar Shapira continued his educational work for the institution, a museum spokesperson told Haaretz at the time. After losing his job, Shapira became more aware of the rising climate of repression in Israeli society. The anti-democratic laws pouring out of the Knesset filled him with visions of a frightening authoritarian future. This is an acceleration process of violence and support of violence because of fear and then legalizing this kind of violence, Shapira calmly remarked. This is what happened in Gaza, despite the strong will of the people to protest. Now, when laws like that are passing in order to finish the Gaza massacre, You make it also illegal to say something against it. And this is the path we're going on. For me, 1,300 dead people in 3 weeks is already frightening. We've already passed the limit. The next cycle of violence will be more. And there will be less Israelis saying anything against it. Not because they don't want to, but because they fear the laws and breaking with the Knesset.
I brought my daughter, Morrigan Bell. She was 11 years old. Brought her back east during the summer. We traveled around a good bit here and there. And again, it was the sort of thing where she had never traveled with me at all. It was quite different. She's quiet, lighthearted, but she doesn't need to be entertained all the time. She can really take care of herself. I wanted her to particularly meet her godmother, Dorothea Brownell, in Saratoga Springs, who she and Harriet, her sister, elegant Victorian women, befriended me many years ago in Saratoga and always gave me a place to stay. They were antiquarians of the first order, antique women of the first order. And it was delightful going to Greenwich, Connecticut while Dorothea was in the country because they had to give up the big house when Harriet died. But looking out the window, seeing Dorothea, who was 83, and Morrigan, my daughter, on the bench there, and watched Dorothea start teaching her how to make lace. She's a wonderful artist, makes beautiful lace. Well, Dorothea's in the hospital right now. I'm going to visit her on Wednesday before I go over to Amherst, to the Pioneer Valley. A fine, fine teacher. Now, you see, I'm a constant source of embarrassment to my daughter. Why are teenage kids so conservative? I don't do that to them. We don't do that to them, do we? I mean, what? I act out a lot, see, and I mortify her in public places, and I don't mean to, but she sure gets mad at me. I carry things around with me to kind of rag people. I wouldn't leave home without my cockroach. I always have my roach with me. That there's a rubber cockroach. It's a tramp roach. Fry Pan Jack calls that a tramp roach. He gave that to me. He says, you know, if you're poor and you haven't got any money, you're out on the street and you're hungry, you go into a restaurant with this, and you put it in the bottom of a bowl of soup, and then you eat down to it. You say, what's that? And you storm out. You say, I'm not going to pay for that. And you leave. Save you a lot of money. That little jewel will save you a lot of money. Little feelers sticking out the side of a sandwich. God, you say, eat half of it. Say, look at that. Leave it. In the hands of an unscrupulous child. Can you imagine what you could do with that in the lunchroom at your school? You could put that in your Jell-O mold. God, you know, and some monitor or teacher is going to come by and say, look at that. What is that? You look at it and say, oh, it's a cockroach. You've got to mess with people day and night. You have to mess with people. You don't mess. You got to mess with them. You know, they just kind of sink into a cryonic torpor and they're never seen again. God, mess with them. I have my dice for people I don't like. Gypsy fortune-telling dice. I like everybody. Those people who know me know I try to get along with everybody, you know. But over the summer I had some fairly serious heart problems, so I decided I couldn't afford to like everybody anymore, you know. I went on a low social cholesterol diet. No more fatheads. And so I run into somebody I don't like. I say, I'm going to tell you a fortune. I did gypsy fortune-telling dice, and I roll the dice, and they're blank. There's no spots on them. They say, I hate to tell you this, but you don't have any fortune. No future. That's it for you. Union supermarket getting some food over by Greenwich or Cambridge, one or the other, with old Dorothea Brownell, Morgan's godmother. Now this is education. The little kid was fussing at the checkout counter, stuck in one of those baskets. It's the lights in those places make kids crazy. We all know that, don't we? Well, and the kid was fussy, and the parents were ragging on the kid. And so I knows kids. I've always nosed kids. And they get them to laugh, and the parents laugh, and the checkout person laughs, and everybody is feeling marginally better about the whole proposition. So I put on the nose. Morgan started punching me in the side. He said, yelling at me, said, "Why can't you be normal?" And old Miss Brownell rapped Morgan on her shin rudely with her cane and said, "He is normal. What you meant to say is average." Yeah, that's education. To mess with people. You've got to mess with people. You've got to mess with people day and night.
From Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, March 4th, 1972. Questioner, from the beginning of my life, I am pursued by a sense of incompleteness. From school to college to work to marriage to affluence, I imagined that the next thing will surely give me peace, but there was no peace. This sense of unfulfillment keeps on growing as years pass by. Maharaj, as long as there is the body and the sense of identity with the body, frustration is inevitable. Only when you know yourself as entirely alien to and different from the body will you find respite from this mixture of fear and craving, inseparable from the I am the body idea. Merely assuaging fears and satisfying desires will not remove this sense of emptiness you are trying to escape from. Only self-knowledge can help you. By self-knowledge, I mean full knowledge of what you are not. Such knowledge is attainable and final. But to the discovery of what you are, there can be no end. The more you discover, the more there remains to discover. Questioner, for this we must have different parents and schools, live in a different society altogether. Maharaj, you cannot change your circumstances, but your attitudes can change. You need not be attached to unessentials, to non-essentials, to the quintessence of bupkis. Questioner, it is truth I seek, not peace. Maharaj, you cannot see the true unless you are at peace. A quiet mind is essential for right perception, which again is a prerequisite for self-realization. Questioner, I have so much to do, I just can't afford to keep my mind quiet and go half speed. Maharaj, it is because of your illusion that you are the doer, and there is something to be done. In reality, things are done to you, not by you. Questioner, if I just let things happen, how can I be sure that they will happen my way? Surely I must bend them to my desire. Maharaj, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preference, but make the slightest distinction between heaven and earth. Questioner, if I just let things happen, how can I be sure they happen my way? Surely, I can nudge them in my direction. Maharaj, your desire just happens to you, along with its fulfillment or non-fulfillment. You can change neither. You may believe that you exert yourself, strive and struggle. Again, it all merely happens, including the fruits of the work, including the success and the too big to fail. Again, it all merely happens, including the fruits of the work. Nothing is by you or for you. All is in the picture, nothing in the light, including what you take to be yourself, the person. You are the light only. You are the light only. Questioner, if I am the light only, how did I come to forget it? Maharaj, you have not forgotten. It is in the picture on the screen that you forget and then remember. You never cease to be a man because you dream to be a tiger. Similarly, you are the pure light appearing as a picture on the screen and also becoming one with it. Questioner, since all happens, why should I worry? Maharaj, exactly.
A dream, I stood beneath an orange sky. Yes, I had a dream, I stood beneath an orange sky, with my brother standing by. My brother standing by. I said, brother, you know, it's a long road we've been walking on. Yes, it is, you know, brother, it is. Such a long road we've been walking on. Oh brother, oh brother. And I had a dream, I stood beneath an orange sky, with my sister standing by. My sister standing by. I said, here is what I know now, sister. Here is what I know now goes like this. In your love, my salvation lies. In your love, my salvation lies. In your love, my My salvation lies in your love, in your love, in your love. Oh, but you know I am so weary, and you know my heart's been broken now. Sometimes my mind is too strong to carry on. Too strong to carry on. But when I'm alone, when I've thrown off the weight of this crazy stone, when I've lost all care for the things I own, that's when I miss you. That's when I miss you, you who are my home. You are my home now. Here's what I know now, brother. Here is what I know now, sister, goes like this. In your love, my salvation lies. 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 In your love, in your love, in your love. Your love now. A dream, I stood beneath an orange sky, with my brother and my sister standing by, with my brother and my sister standing by now, with my brother and my sister standing by.
Exactly. Freedom is freedom from worry. Having realized that you cannot influence the results, pay no attention to your desires and fears or to the headlines that the Arctic drilling is happening. These are the headlines from yesterday's paper. The Obama administration on Monday gave conditional approval to allow Shell to start drilling for oil off the Alaskan coast this summer, a major victory for the petroleum industry and a devastating blow to environmentalists. So says the New York Times yesterday, Tuesday. Can you imagine? You cannot make this shit up. You can't make it up. They must have had scientists. Can you imagine the kind of scientists who would say that shell drilling in the Arctic, in the Chukchi Sea, Shell has sought for years to drill in the icy waters of the Chukchi Sea. Federal scientists believe the region could hold up to 15 billion barrels of oil. The Interior Department decision angered environmentalists who for years have demanded that the administration reject offshore Arctic drilling proposals. They fear that a drilling accident in the treacherous Arctic Ocean waters could have far more devastating consequences even than the deadly Gulf of Mexico spill of 2010, when the Deepwater Horizon rig explosion killed 11 men and sent millions of barrels of oil spewing into the water. And then all the Corexit behind that. Exactly. Freedom is freedom from worry. Having realized that you cannot influence the results, pay no attention to your desires and fears. Let them come and go. Pick and choose no more. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preference. Picking and choosing is a disease of the mind. Mind the gap. Questioner, if I turn my attention from what happens, what am I to live by? Maharaj, again, it is like asking, what shall I do if I stop dreaming? And in particular, stop dreaming the American dream. Stop dreaming that dream that will very soon result in nightmares for all in the episphere. Us 36 here at Hamlin, and if you're with us, you're one of us. Today, here, now, on the B-side of the dawn, of the daydream of the American dream, the wet corporate dream of habeas corpusless dronados, shelter in place, Watertown, don't betray us. You take a deep breath. You wonder, could I do the Om? Could I stay Om with my Omies? So you try, you take another deep breath. Join me. Once more. Again, it is like asking, what shall I do if I stop dreaming? Stop and see. Take a deep breath, go half speed. Hail Mary, full of grace, Ribono shel olam, inshallah. Oye, mira. Us 36 Lamed Vavniks. We're breaking it down. Given the benefit of the doubt even to the lumpen Netanyahus. And the Dildan. And the didgeridudes. Dick-driven Mad Max. Michael Max. Woodstock, Joe Cocker just died. I just heard Joe Cocker dying. His death throes. I thought he was having them way back when in Woodstock. Joe Cocker, thank you. A little help from the Beatles you got there. It was a good version though, Joe. You was a good man, little out of control, little alpha male, little type A, but you was a good man, Joe Cocker. Again, it is like asking, what shall I do if I stop dreaming? Stop and see. You need not be anxious. What next? There is always the next. Life does and does not begin, nor end. Immovable it moves, momentary it lasts. This is a teaching moment on a learning curve. Just as light no number of projected pictures can exhaust, so does life fill every shape to the brim and return to its sources when the shape breaks down, or when you see the story behind the story, the epistory, the extinction 2112 story. Us 36, we are grieving. We're holding the grieve. We're reviscerating the rage. We're taking a deep breath. We're holding our breath because of the fear and the shame, but we apologize to Leonard Pelletier. I think that's how it's pronounced. Anyway, we apologize, Leonard. And we wonder what goes on.
States, 50 lines, 50 crying all the times, 50 boys, 50 lies, 50 I'm gonna change.
Not end. Immovable it moves, momentary it lasts. This is a teaching moment on a learning curve. Just as light no number of projected pictures can exhaust, so does life fill every shape to the brim and return to its sources when the shape breaks down, or when you see the story behind the story, the epistory, the extinction 2112 story. Us 36, we are grieving. We're holding the grieve. We're reviscerating the rage. We're taking a deep breath. We're holding our breath because of the fear and the shame, but we apologize to Leonard Pelletier. I think that's how it's pronounced. Anyway, we apologize, Leonard. And we wonder what goes on.
50 states, 50 lines, 50 crying all the times, 50 boys, 50
Questioner, if life is so wonderful, how could ignorance happen? Maharaj, you want to treat the disease without having seen the patient. Before you ask about ignorance, why don't you inquire first who is the ignorant? When you say you are ignorant, you merely mean that you have imposed the concept of ignorance over the actual state of your thoughts and feelings. Examine them as they occur. Give them your full attention, and you will find that there is nothing like ignorance, only inattention. Give attention to what worries you. That is all. After all, worry is mental pain, and pain is invariably a call for attention. The moment you give attention, the call for it ceases, and the question of ignorance dissolves. Instead of waiting for an answer to your question, find out who is asking the question, and what makes him ask it. You will soon find that it is the mind, goaded by fear of pain, that asks the question. And in fear there is memory and anticipation, past and future. Attention brings you back to the present, the now, and the presence in the now is a state ever at hand, but rarely noticed. Questioner, you are reducing sadhana to simple attention. How is it that other teachers teach complete, difficult, and time-consuming sadhanas? Maharaj, the gurus usually teach the sadhanas by which they themselves have reached their goal, whatever their goal may be. This is but natural. For their own sadhana, they know intimately. I was taught to give attention to my sense of I am, and I found it supremely effective. Therefore, I can speak of it with full confidence. But often people come with their bodies, brain, and minds so mishandled, perverted, weak, that the state of formless attention is quite beyond them. There, some simpler token of earnestness is appropriate. The repetition of a word or the gazing at a picture will prepare the body and mind for deeper and more direct search. After all, it is the earnestness that is indispensable, crucial. The sadhana is only the vessel, and it must be filled to the brim with earnestness, which is but love in action. For nothing can be done without love.
Whites can help us, but they can't join us. There can be no black-white unity until there is first some black unity. We cannot think of being acceptable to others until we have first proven acceptable to ourselves. Concerning nonviolence, it is criminal to teach a man not to defend himself when he is the constant victim of brutal attacks. there are problems in the community. Some of those examples of those problems are the vices that destroy the moral fiber in our community. Drunkenness, drug addiction, prostitution, organized crime that robs the Negro community of probably 90% of its economic potential and moral potential. One of my reasons for going out on the limb as I have is to try and make white people be shocked, awake to some of their senses, because if they don't awake, they're going to find out that this little Negro that they thought was passive has become a roaring, uncontrollable lion right at their doorstep, not at their doorstep, inside their house, in their bed, in their kitchen, in their attic, in their basement. And if you know that in time, you can do something about it.
Tell you why. He's on the cover of the New York Post, every network coast to coast. All he needed was a hot night in June, 'cause he had the needle and he had the spoon. When he spiked it, bit him, man, he flew into America's living room. We all love tragedy, and it loves us too. Marriage made in Hollywood between greed and you. All you need to be a star is to die in open view. It's a marriage made in Hollywood between greed and you, between greed and you, between greed and you. His old friend in his back pocket. That horse could kick, that horse could scream, ride you out of here into a different scene. Unrequited love, and that makes it fair. But who keeps score when you're in midair? We all love tragedy, it loves us too. It's a marriage made in Hollywood between greed and you. All you need to be a star is to die in open view. It's a marriage made in Hollywood between greed and you, between greed and you, between greed and you. Like a free-fall chute that didn't open, he looked down to see his dream was broken. He stared back up at a hot gray sky, ran his life and then he died. Well, if you jump off a building, brother, beware, 'cause my friend Jimmy woke up midair. No time to smile, no time to wait. They buried him in a media grave. We all love tragedy, it loves us too. It's a marriage made in Hollywood between greed and you. And all you need to be a star is to die in open view. It's a marriage made in Hollywood between greed and you, between greed and you, between greed and you. It's a tragedy.
My favorite article from yesterday's paper, my favorite quote. Judge's ruling against 2 banks finds misconduct in 2008 crash. Many on Wall Street have long argued that the banks did not generally break the law when they packaged shoddy mortgages and sold them to investors in the lead up to the financial crisis of 2008. But on Monday, in the starkest of terms, a federal judge dealt a strong blow to that version of history. She ruled that 2 banks misled Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in selling them mortgage bonds that contained numerous errors and misrepresentations. This is the quote. The magnitude of the falsity, conservatively measured, is enormous, Judge Denise L. Coate of Federal District Court in Manhattan wrote in a scathing 361-page decision. The magnitude of falsity, conservatively measured, is enormous. Wow. That gets you thinking. It almost makes you want to read that 361-page opinion. Almost, but not quite. You just know something bad happened in 2008, and still bad things are happening. The Obama institutional, structural, homicidal administration approved shell drilling in the Arctic. Whoa, you cannot make this shite up.
I know that fan is moving air, I can see it in your hair, but I can't bear to breathe it in somehow. I'll rise and fall with you, 'cause you can't fail me now. I'll rise and fall with you, 'cause you can't fail me now. Salt is sweet upon my mouth, and dark throws sparks against my house. The stain of love's a smudge upon my brow, but you see through me, and you can't fail me now. You see right through me, you can't fail me now. Bit off more than I can chew. It's something that I tend to do when fewer words are what we need and how. You bite my tongue secret heart of ours. We're taught to love the worst of us, and mercy more than life, but trust me, mercy's just a warning shot across the bow. I live for yours, and you can't fail me now. I live for your mercy, you can't fail me now. You can't fail me now.
Fire and air, earth, water, fire and air, earth, water, fire and air, earth, water, fire and air, she fires and air, everywhere she touches, earth, water, fire and air, she fires and air, everywhere she touches, earth, water, changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. Hey, Anu, fire and air, earth, water, 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 fire and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she fires and air, everything she touches, change, water, changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes.
She changes everything, and everything she touches changes. Also from yesterday's paper, Brady receives a 4-game ban. Now, for those of you who don't identify with that headline, who've been living under a rock and who have no inkling of austerity or sequestration or Deflategate, it's happening. It's happening out there. Shell's going to drill in the Arctic. And New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady, a golden boy of American sports, and perhaps pro football's biggest star, winner of this year's Super Bowl, was suspended Monday for 4 regular season games without pay by the NFL, which said he had deliberately and secretly violated league rules. The NFL also fined the Patriots $1 million and took away 2 prized future draft picks, including a first-round choice in 2016, saying that the team and Brady schemed to improperly deflate footballs. In the AFC Championship game last season, on the way to securing New England's 4th Super Bowl victory, a deflated football, for those of you who know nothing and care less, a deflated football is said to be easier to grip, especially in the cold and wet conditions that the Patriots faced at home against the Indianapolis Colts. Andrew Luck as their golden boy quarterback. In a statement, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell of the Ray Rice 2-game suspension, Roger Goodell of the never having seen the footage in the elevator when Ray Rice cold-cocked Janae. Do you remember? Or Rich Incognito said something nasty and wordish to Jonathan Martin and had to leave the Miami Dolphins in a 310-pound huff. In a statement, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said he supported the punishment issued by the league's executive vice president for football operations, Troy Vincent, for what the league called, quote, conduct detrimental to the integrity of the NFL, unquote. Wow. Have you ever heard such an moronic, manic state? Let's take a deep breath. Om. Om. This is Tommaso Leary, a prayer for everyone. Blessed are the absent, for they are not here. Blessed are the near at hand, for they would seem to be. Blessed are the saved and the damned, for both are born to blessing. Blessed are the best and the worst, the wisest, the most foolish. Blessed are the fallen, the risen, the reverent, the ghoulish. Blessed are the good, the bad, the having and the had. Blessed are the graves of the living, the mansions of the dead. Blessed are the wretched, the sovereign, the suffered, the expelled. Blessed all the realms we remember, realms we forgot. Blessed every landfill, every hole. Blessed the souls in heaven, the souls in hell. And blessed the beginning and the end. And blessed, ever blessed, thrice blessed, the unbegun and the never-ending. And blessed, ever blessed, the blessed and the unblessed. May all find rest.
Your own voice, so sing. You got two hands, let's go and make anything. We all got rules, we all have to break. We all have to make those mistakes. Really lying. See the people on TV get shot in the very own street. People just like you, people just like me. Can't you see you got your hand on the advantages? You can stand to manage your damages. You, my dear, are forced to feed, not to fear. You got a right to anywhere, anything. You got a right, you got a right. You're a human being. You got a right to anywhere, anything. You got a right, you got a right. You're a human being. You're a human being. You're a human being. You're a human being. Got a right, 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 got a right. Got a right, got a right, got a right, got a right, got a right. You're a human being. Got a right, 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 got a right. Human being. Got a right, got a right, got a right, got a right, got a right.
Having finished the midday meal, our bodily strength is fully restored. Our power extends over the 10 quarters and through the 3 periods of time, and we are strong. As to revolving the wheel of Dharma, let no thought be wasted over it. May all beings attain true wisdom.
Fire and air, earth, water, fire and air, earth, water, fire and air, earth, water, fire and air. touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. Fire and air, earth, water, 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 fire and air, everything she touches changes. Water, fires 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 and air, everything she touches changes. Water changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes.
Our meal is offered to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, with teachers and family, with nations and all life. Let us equally share. To beings throughout the 6 worlds, we offer this meal. All hungry ghosts, all tortured spirits, all Coke 1% master narratives, official story, historians. Now we give you this Dharma food. Now we give you this Dharma food. May it fill the 10 directions and satisfy hungry ghosts in a eukaryotic, semi-sapient, smart species such as ourselves, such as our own semi-Semitic selves, soul-selling Satanists, satanophobes and satanophiles. Fight it out, like Democrats and Republicans, like Hillary and Jebich. But you never know. You never know. May it, now we give you this Dharma food, may it fill the 10 direction and satisfy hunger in realms of hungry ghosts and dark pools, dark energy, and double beta decay. All hungry ghosts, all tortured spirits, abandon greed. Abandon greed and rouse. Get it up. Rouse the desire for enlightenment, revelatory, orgasmic reality. Above and beyond the call of booty and duty. You practice intention and intuition, and where does it get you?
Beside myself, no, it ain't like me. It's like I'm somebody else, baby, that's alright. You're not the man I was looking for. You're every bit of him, plus a whole lot more. Now that I got you, feel so good. Don't wanna let you go.
Ships minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, but my hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. So won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? That's all I ever had. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop at the dime. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. So won't you help me sing this song of freedom. That's all I ever had. Hey, redemption songs. That's all I ever had. Redemption songs. These songs of freedom. Redemption songs. These songs of freedom.
Maharaj, the Guru usually teaches the sadhanas by which they themselves have reached their goal, whatever their goal may be. This is but natural, for their own sadhana they know intimately. I was taught to give attention to my sense of I am, and I found it supremely effective. Therefore, I can speak of it with full confidence, but often people come with their bodies, brain, and mind so mishandled, perverted, and weak that the state of formless attention is quite beyond them. That there some simpler token of earnestness is appropriate. The repetition of a word or the gazing at a picture will prepare the body and the mind for deeper and more direct search. After all, it is earnestness that is indispensable, the crucial factor. The sadhana is only the vessel, and it must be filled to the brim with earnestness, which is but love in action, for nothing can be done without love. Questioner, we love only ourselves. Maharaj, were it so, it would be splendid. Love yourself wisely, and you will reach the summit of perfection. Everybody loves his body, but few love their real being. Questioner, does my real being need my love? Maharaj, your real being is love itself, and your many loves are its reflections, according to the situation at the moment. Questioner, we are selfish. We know only self-love. Maharaj, good enough for a start. Start there. By all means, wish yourself well. Think over, feel out deeply what is really good for you, and strive for it earnestly. Very soon, you will find that the real is your only good. Questioner, yet I do not understand why the various gurus insist on prescribing complicated and difficult sadhanas. Don't they know any better? Maharaj, it is not what you do, but what you stop doing that matters. People who begin their sadhanas are so feverish and restless that they have to be very busy to keep themselves on track. An absorbing routine is good for them. After some time, they quieten down and turn away from effort and its effortfulness. In peace and silence, the skin of the eye dissolves, and the inner and the outer become one. Real sadhana is effortless.
Fire and air, fire and air, earth, water, fire and air, fire and air, earth, water, fire and air, fire and air, earth, water, fire and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, earth, water, fire and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, earth, water, changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. Hey, Anu, hey, Anu. Fire and air, earth, water, 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 fire and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, fires and air, she tires and air, everything she touches, change, water, changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes.
Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They do not appear or disappear, are not tainted or pure, do not increase or decrease. Therefore, in emptiness, no form, no feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness. No eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no color, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realm of eyes, and so forth, until no realm of mind consciousness. No ignorance and also no extinction of it, and so forth, until no old age, no Woodstock death, and also no extinction of Joe Cocker. No suffering, no origination, no stopping, no eightfold origami path, no cognition, also no attainment, with nothing to attain. The bodhisattva depends on prajna paramita, and the mind is no hindrance. Without any hindrance, no fear exists. Far apart from every perverted view, One dwells in nirvana. In the three worlds, all Buddhas depend on prajnaparamita and attain anuttara samyak sambodhi. Therefore, know that prajnaparamita is the great transcendent mantra, is the great bright mantra, is the utmost mantra, is the supreme mantra, which is able to relieve all suffering, is true, not false. So proclaim the prajnaparamita mantra, proclaim the mantra which says, Gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisvaha. Gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisvaha. Gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisvaha.
You can't miss it. And I said, must be the place. Put some mountains here. Otherwise, what are the characters going to fall off of? And what about stairs? Yodelay-hee-hoo. Here's a man who lives a life of danger. Everywhere he goes, he stays a stranger. Howdy, stranger. Mind if I smoke? And he said, every man for himself.
Questioner, I sometimes have the feeling that space itself is my body. Maharaj, when you are bound by the illusion, I am this body, you are merely a point in space and a moment in time. When the self-identification with the body is no more, all space and time are in your mind, which is a mere ripple in consciousness, which is awareness reflected in nature. Awareness and matter are the active and the passive aspects of pure being, which is in both and beyond both. Space and time are the body and the mind of the universal existence in the multiverse. My feeling is that all that happens in space and time happens to me. That every experience is my experience. Every form is my form. What I take myself to be becomes my body, and all that happens to that body becomes my mind. But at the root of the universe, there is pure awareness beyond space and time, here and now, right and wrong. Know it to be your real being and act normal. Act accordingly. Questioner, what difference will it make in action what I take myself to be? Actions just happen according to circumstances. Maharaj, circumstances and conditions rule the ignorant. The knower of reality, the witness, is not compelled. The only law she obeys is the law of love. You're listening to WZBC Newton 90.3 FM. I'm Herbie Pearlman. This is the news at dawn, extended a little beyond the beyond. If you're just joining us, welcome. We often play Radio Eco Shock. Let me play something from that now.
This is Radio Eco Shock with Alex Smith.
This week on Radio Eco Shock, we're going to the end of the Earth. It's a feature-length interview about new science that shows Antarctica is melting. I guarantee you will read headlines and see amazing video news from the science we're discovering this week. Sea levels will rise around the planet for centuries, reshaping the coastlines and civilization. Then we'll finish up with the return of Marjorie Wildcraft with more tips on growing your own groceries. It's all food for thought and action. I'm Alex Smith. The journey begins. There's a lot of action in Antarctica, and that can bring changes all over the world. Here to discuss recent science is Dr. Roland C. Warner. He is a researcher with the Antarctic Climate and Ecosystems Cooperative Research Centre at the University of Tasmania. Tasmania is the closest Australian state to Antarctica. Dr. Warner, welcome to Radio Eco Shock.
Hello, Alex. Great to be with you.
Well, thank you for joining us for an update on this frozen world at the South Pole. First of all, what parts of Australia are closest to Antarctica, and what claims does your country have on that continent?
Okay, well, I'm here in Tasmania. This is an island state of Australia, south of the Australian mainland, and while Antarctica is still some distance away to our south, there are only a few small islands in the middle of the Southern Ocean between Australia and Antarctica. However, as you alluded, Australia does have a territorial claim to a large piece of the Antarctic, about 42% of it, to be precise. Now, various countries established these claims in the age of heroic exploration, putting out flags and claiming things in the name of typically your monarch or your state was the done thing in those days. And these claims exist, and some of them actually tend to overlap, particularly around the most accessible parts of Antarctica, in that finger of the Antarctic Peninsula that points up to South America. And one big sector isn't actually claimed by anyone at all, but these claims are all on ice, if you will, under the Antarctic Treaty, which was established in the 1950s, and it's that treaty that governs how people behave in Antarctica these days, whether they have claims to particular pieces of turf or ice or not.
And have you been there?
Yes, I've been to Antarctica for 3 summer seasons with a Australian, US, British, French collaborative project. It's imaginatively called IceCap. This is a bit of a mouthful. It stands for Investigating Cryospheric Evolution Through Collaborative Aerogeophysical Profiling. And what that means is that we have a whole range of instruments on an aircraft. In fact, it's a rejuvenated DC-3, genuine World War II vintage. And we fly for hours and hours out over the ice sheet, measuring many different things that I'm sure we'll discuss today using that aircraft. So I was at Casey Station, which is one of 3 Australian bases on the continent itself. That's due south of Western Australia. And I've got there in this modern era either by flying directly there in a jet plane from here in Hobart to a blue ice runway on the ice cap behind the station, or rather more long way round, changing planes at the US station at McMurdo and flying for hours and hours and hours in a ski-equipped Hercules to land at Casey. And on one occasion I've come home on our icebreaker, which took 7 days instead of 5 hours.
It's a giant place. I mean, it is a real continent. Now, in a shocking bit of news, Antarctica just experienced the 2 hottest days ever recorded there, namely 63.5 degrees Fahrenheit or 17.5 degrees C, and that was at the Argentinian Esperanza base on the Antarctic Peninsula. I've heard that was warmer than the temperature in Britain on the same day in late March. Is that just a freak occurrence, or do you think Antarctica is warming?
Yeah, I haven't checked. It might have been as warm as the same day here in Hobart. It's not quite an either-or, actually. The Antarctic Peninsula, that finger of Antarctica pointing up towards South America, is an area of Antarctica that shows some of the greatest climate warming of recent years for the whole planet. It's about 5 degrees Celsius warmer over the last 50 years, according to the British Antarctic Survey. So it's consistent with that sort of situation that you're going to keep getting record-breaking maximum temperatures. And, of course, one hot day is weather, while the trend in hot days is climate change. It's worth noticing that Esperanza's previous record was only 0.4 degrees Celsius lower. That was back in 1961. And it was even later in the year. It was a month later. It was in April. So certainly Antarctica is warming. And so one has to expect hotter days. So not a freak occurrence.
All right. Well, let's turn to a new scientific paper you were directly involved in. The title is Ocean Access to a Cavity Beneath Totten Glacier in East Antarctica. We need to frame that a bit, obviously. Where is the Totten Glacier and how big is it?
Yes, certainly. The Totten Glacier is the largest glacier in East Antarctica. We tend to split Antarctica up by which of the world's hemispheres we're looking at, since after all in Antarctica everything is sort of north. And so East Antarctica is the part sweeping between the Greenwich Meridian and the date line below Africa and Australia. So the Totten Glacier is in fact on almost exactly the opposite side of Antarctica to Esperanza. We're looking at about 116 east longitude, so almost directly below the city of Perth, the capital city of Western Australia. And as I said, it's a very large glacier. It drains 540,000 square kilometres of East Antarctica. Here we like to think of that as being more than twice the size of the Australian state of Victoria. For a North American audience, it might be more helpful to say that's somewhat more than twice the area of all the Great Lakes put together.
And that's big, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and so just to fill out the rest of the story, there's 70 billion tonnes of ice flows out of that glacier every year. That's amazingly about the flow rate of Niagara Falls, but obviously it's moving slowly, but on a very grand scale.
Is that the amount that actually reaches the sea every year?
Yeah, that's the amount of ice that you can collect in 500,000 square kilometres. I should say that the ice shelf is more than 30 kilometres wide at the front, so considerably bigger span than Niagara Falls, and it's 200 metres thick there, and so there's a lot of ice on the move.
Well, you've hit something that's a little confusing to some of us. We have sea ice, which doesn't directly add to sea level rise. We have melting from land ice, like Greenland, which does add to the sea level rise. And then in the Arctic, there's only a couple of small ice shelves left attached to Canadian polar islands. But in Antarctica, it seems confusing. Could you just give us a quick update on the relationship between sea ice, ice shelves, and land-based glaciers?
Yeah, this is certainly something which confuses a lot of people. Yes, the only ice turning to water or flowing into the sea that's going to affect sea level rise is obviously ice that's currently not floating on the ocean, because, courtesy of dear old Archimedes, we actually know that the ice that's floating on the ocean, when it melts, will simply fill in the volume it was previously displacing. So that's not to say that the melting of things like ice shelves, which is glacial ice that's floating on the ocean, that's not to say that it won't have impacts on the Earth system, because it's certainly going to freshen the top layers of the ocean. But in terms of sea level rise, it's grounded ice like Greenland and like the little ice caps that still remain in the Canadian Arctic and mountain glaciers around the world, and the sleeping giant in the west, which perhaps is not sleeping, Antarctica. That's where sea level is going to come from. I would like to sort out the sea ice story as well, though. The thing about sea ice is this is the ocean surface freezing, and it's around Antarctica and in the Arctic. It's one of the big seasonal changes in the Earth's climate system. Around Antarctica in the wintertime, the area where the ocean surface is predominantly covered by ice that's been frozen out of the ocean itself. They'd almost double the size of that big white patch down at the bottom of the globe. And when that sea ice is forming, the sea ice itself is relatively fresh, and the salt water underneath it becomes much saltier. And while it's a different story to the one we want to tell today, that's actually what drives a lot of the deep global ocean circulation. So the things that happen with sea ice around Antarctica will affect the deep, what's called the overturning circulation of the whole planet. So the progression of ice shelves and the ice sheet is also an interesting one. The melting away or the changes in ice shelves don't directly affect sea level rise, as I said, but the ice shelves are in some sense the gatekeepers, particularly for Antarctica, in terms of the rate at which ice flows from the grounded ice sheet into the ocean. And we believe that, in fact, changes in the ice shelves are going to be the major drivers in changing the dynamics of the whole ice sheet. And so they do play a big role in future sea level.
It's been compared to pulling the cork out of a bottle.
Yes, or you can think of it as a keystone in an arch. Basically, you have a big ice shelf. In Antarctica, the biggest ones are very firmly settled in very large bays that would, in fact, probably be called seas if they weren't full of ice shelf. And the presence of the ice shelf there provides a retarding stress that's holding back ice, which is flowing. Typically, ice flow in Antarctica is concentrated into major, quite fast-moving outlet glaciers or ice streams, and it's quite focused flow, like the Tottenham that I was mentioning before, and often it's channeled into these very big ice shelves. And so if you do something to change the ice shelf, you're going to do something to change the whole balance of forces that's restraining the rate at which that ice flows into the ocean.
It seems parts of Antarctica are actually below sea level. Is that correct? And what would that continent look like without the ice cap?
Yes, that's certainly true. Again, that east-west Antarctica dividing line is perhaps a useful one here. For a long time we've known, by probing through to see how thick the ice is and how far down it is to the bedrock underneath, we've known that a lot of the West Antarctic ice sheet is standing on the seafloor, maybe half a mile or more, kilometre or so deep. And that includes actually the summit ridge between ice that flows westwards to the Ross Ice Shelf and ice that flows eastwards towards the Amundsen Sea and around towards South America. So if the ice sheet hadn't developed there, this would just be ocean where one could go sailing. And what's developed in the last few years, partly as a result of the major aerial survey that we've done with the Ice Cap project, is we've better defined that extensive areas of East Antarctica are also sitting on bedrock that's deep below sea level. In this case, that turns out because the ice is even thicker than we thought. In some places, it's 2 miles thick. And in particular, we've been exploring the Aurora Basin, which is a vast area in the catchment of the Totten Glacier. And we've identified deep bedrock channels that connect that deep basin to the coastal zone. And so the Aurora Basin and the so-called Wilkes subglacial basin, which is immediately to its east, these are the largest, what we call submarine parts of the East Antarctic ice sheet. If you instantly removed all the ice, West Antarctica would simply become a collection of islands. You could sail from the Pacific to the Atlantic without having to go past Cape Horn. And East Antarctica would have a few major bites out of it, which might even rate as seas.
And so until the new research done by your team, we didn't really understand how warmer waters could undermine this Totten Glacier. How does it work, and how did you do the science to find this out?
Yeah, the way that works is that the crucial question for getting melting of ice shelves and hence changing the flow of the grounded ice behind is to work out, is there warm ocean water nearby? And more importantly, are there pathways by which it can circulate its way up onto the continental shelf, and can it actually get into these cavities underneath the ice shelves? And you can imagine it's hard enough to, you can see how deep the ocean is if you sail up and down with sonar on your ship. But it's very hard to work out what's the geometry of the seafloor underneath maybe 1 or even 2 kilometres of ice. Now, the survey aircraft we use has a radar system that can see right through to the base of the ice, and you can see a lot of internal structure through the ice as well. We also have some magnetometers to try and figure out what sort of character of rock is actually underlying the ice sheet. Most importantly for this work, we have a very sensitive gravity meter. As we fly along, we measure minute variations in the strength of local gravity, and flying very near the surface and very slowly in an old DC-3, maybe 140 knots, is ideal for that sort of survey. Then you have to sit down and do a lot of detailed work to figure out how those tiny variations in the strength of local gravity can be translated into what depth of ice and water and rock is directly below your flight track. So our radar can't penetrate seawater, so we can only see the bottom of the ice sheet. So we only see the bedrock where the ice is on the ground. But this gravity data allows us to map these inaccessible ocean cavities underneath ice shelves, and indeed to map the sea floor off the coast there, where often sea ice prevents ships from getting in. And so what we've been able to do is to map out the shape of the bedrock beneath this floating terminus of both the Totten Glacier and a neighbouring ice shelf called the Moscow University Ice Shelf. And the most significant finding is that there are some deep water channels that connect the open ocean to the cavity. And this includes a previously completely unknown hydrological pathway, if you like, another channel that increases the prospects that warm water can circulate into this cavity. And maybe if the temperature of the water changes, then the melting, which is already quite extensive, and therefore the dynamics of the system will change.
If you have a story idea or thoughts on something you've heard, contact us, radio@ecoshock.org. That's radio@ecoshock.org.
You are listening to Radio EcoShock. I'm Alex Smith with Australian scientist Roland C. Warner. Roland, can we expect any measurable sea level rise from the Totten Glacier complex, say, in this century?
Yes, we can. And we're already seeing some small contribution to sea level rise there. I'm not sure that anybody's totaled it all up, because the grounded ice in the glacier stream that forms the Totten Glacier is actually getting thinner near the coast. In fact, the ice surface there has been in recent years, and have a few years data, but it's been dropping by maybe a metre and a half per year. So this is, in fact, in East Antarctica, one of the hot spots where there definitely is ice loss. In terms of what will happen in the rest of the century, we now know that it's possible to get warm water in there, and the dynamics of the Totten system says that there's already some considerable melting going on there. We don't really know in detail how future climate might increase that heat supply and what the consequent transmission of that effect to sea level rise would be. But it's certainly in East Antarctica, it's the place to watch. Whether the timescale is centuries or a little bit longer, we don't quite know, but certainly a few people are taking this very seriously as perhaps the part of East Antarctica to watch.
There's been a lot of talk between scientists about the importance of the grounding line. What is that?
Yes, the grounding line, and it's probably really more of a zone, is where the glacier ice actually starts to go afloat. As we've just discussed, a lot of Antarctica, the ice is sitting really on the sea floor, and as it flows towards the margin, eventually there comes a point where it's simply going to go afloat. Given the direction of ice flow, it probably would be better if it was called the ungrounding line or the flotation line. It's important because it's the place where suddenly the base of the ice sheet is not protected by being on the ground, and suddenly the possibility of ocean-driven melting commences there. And I should say that it's again something that we've only learned in the last 2 decades, that near these grounding lines where often the ice is very deep, here in the Totten, we're talking about a transition point that's probably a mile below sea level. The melting in as soon as these grounding lines is tens of meters a year, maybe 50 meters a year. And given that the water that's doing that melting is still by any swimmer's standard very close to freezing, it's likely that this is an extremely sensitive part of the climate system. So that's the first thing that's important about the grounding line. The second thing that's important is that, particularly in some configurations of the bedrock, these grounding lines themselves may move. So it's not just a matter of bringing more ice up to a fixed gate and then having it flow through there and melt away. It's quite possible that the grounding line itself will migrate inland, reducing the size of the grounded ice sheet and transmitting these changes in forces at the margin even further upstream.
Well, sea level rise is the real wild card when we think about impacts of Antarctic melting. I've just gone through a paper by lead author Fernando Paulo titled Volume Loss from Antarctic Ice Shelves is Accelerating. Is it just the ice shelves, or is ice loss from Antarctica increasing and at a faster rate? Do we know?
Yeah, this comes back to the point we were discussing earlier, that these guys have done a great job in trying to improve our understanding about what's happening to ice shelves. Previously, we had quite good measurements with a quite precise laser instrument that was flying in space for a few years, showing that these ice shelves were getting thinner. It's a really hard problem because given that the ice shelf is floating, if you see a half a metre change in the surface height of the floating ice shelf, that means that you've lost 5 metres of ice from below. What they've done here is said, well, that 5-year record is rather short, and so the longest record that's available is actually only about 18 years from some radar satellites that were measuring the height of the ice shelves. And so they've been able to conclude that ice shelves are certainly on the whole getting thinner, so they're losing ice, which is actually slightly freshening the Antarctic coastal ocean. But because they're getting thinner, they're also likely reducing this restraining force that they have on the ice sheet. And in fact, the ice shelves where they see the biggest changes in West Antarctica are in those places where the outlet glaciers have been observed to be speeding up. So it's certainly important, and it's important in terms of exploring what we think is one of the controllers of change in the ice sheet and sea level contributions from the ice sheet itself.
In a comment on that article, one of the scientists, Laurie Padman, expressed there's a lot of uncertainty about what will happen on Antarctica as the world climate changes. In fact, he said, quote, "It is plausible that even if the Earth's average temperature increases, the effect on ocean currents around Antarctica might actually work against Antarctic ice sheet melting." And he goes on to say that past paleo records may not tell us a lot because we're changing the climate so fast compared to what happened in past times. What do you think about all that?
Well, it's true that one has to be careful about, as even financial planners tell you, past performance is no guarantee of future performance. But we're certainly changing the composition of the atmosphere, and so he's correct that the driver for changing climate is no longer the Milankovitch, the so-called Ice Age cycle. Mind you, those changes were pretty dramatic in terms of sea level rise 14,000 years ago when the great northern hemisphere ice sheets decayed. But certainly we're forcing the system a lot faster now than any natural forcing that's been applied. I'd be a little surprised if it was actually going to work against ice sheet melting on the whole. The deep ocean is already warming, and you've only got to warm water a little bit for it to carry a lot of heat compared to the way heat can be carried by changes in air temperature. So I think that the change in dynamic response is going to be quite high, and it's a little hard to see that we can avoid conveying that warmth to the ice shelves, and then by weakening the ice shelves, increase the ice discharge from Antarctica. Certainly warmer air temperatures will generate some higher snowfall, but it's not really clear that that can dominate the sort of accelerations of ice flow that we've already seen.
And Laurie Padman also talks about the irony that sea levels around Antarctica and Greenland may actually go down as the glaciers melt. How is that possible?
Yeah, this is quite amazing. It's another one of these obvious with hindsight insights, and it's pretty recent insight for glaciologists anyway. Any sort of water surface represents our common sense idea of level, since obviously water flows downhill. In fact, the sea surface measured with precision from space shows that idea of downhill is modulated by all sorts of things like currents and winds and other factors. And in particular, the vast mass of ice on these grounded ice sheets exerts a sufficient gravitational attraction to pull the ocean around them towards them, and this generates an upslope in the sea surface around the ice sheets. And so locally, if you're losing lots of ice, billions of tons of ice, then that reduces this attraction, and it's a bit of a surprise to one's intuition that in fact near ice sheets this can outweigh the overall effect that you put that lost ice into the global sea level. But in fact near the ice sheet the sea level is going to fall considerably more, and in fact there have only been a few idealised computer simulations trying to put this effect into account, and this does provide a little bit of a stabiliser to grounding line retreat if the sea level near your ice sheet or your outlet glacier is falling. I should just say there's a bad news consequence to this local effect, which means that the sea level rises more than you might have expected far away from the ice sheets. There are some estimates that in North America you might get 25% more than global average sea level rise. So the water all has to go somewhere.
Right. Now, some scientists, including the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, suggest total sea level rise by 2100 may only be 1 meter. Others think that's a very conservative estimate. We might get that much from Antarctic melting alone, plus what comes from the Arctic. Roland Warner, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a highly uncertain question, the contribution, particularly from Antarctica, but from the ice sheets in general to global sea level rise. The IPCC is, as you say, coming up with numbers that are regarded as conservative. They also have to come up, of course, with what they think might happen under a whole range of scenarios. And because of the immense scrutiny that IPCC has, they do put a lot of effort into quantifying what they mean by being uncertain about something. And you can go and look in their tables, and if they say very likely, then that means such and such a probability percentage. But when it came to Antarctica, they finally had to give up on that. And while they said that only collapse of the so-called marine sectors of the Antarctic ice sheet, if initiated, could make sea level rise substantially above their likely range, the best they could do was say this additional contribution would not exceed several tenths of a metre during the 21st century. Now, that's a little bit of a lapse from the careful calibrated uncertainty in terms of, several tenths of a metre covers everywhere from, 20 centimetres to the best part of a metre. So this really is the most uncertain contribution to long-term sea level prediction. Things like the thermal expansion of the ocean, pretty well under control in terms of simulating that for various different climate warming scenarios. Mountain glaciers are also fairly hard to do, but at least there's an upper limit of the worst that can happen is they might eventually all be gone. You don't want to apply that sort of analysis to Antarctica or Greenland. Not a useful worst-case scenario, because it tells you something like 60 metres of sea level rise, which is certainly not going to happen anytime soon, but it's also not a useful end member.
Because really it's so shocking, it would rearrange civilization altogether if we eventually get that much. But as you say, we're talking at least in centuries.
You're listening to EcoShock Radio for the world.
I'm Alex Smith. Get it all at our website, ecoshock.org. Don't forget our hot interview with prepper garden wizard Marjorie Wildcraft is still to come. This is Radio EcoShock. We're talking with Australian Antarctic expert Dr. Roland Warner. Another complication difficult for non-scientist Dr. Warner to understand is the prediction that snowfall on Antarctica may actually increase with climate change, and even that may help speed glacier movement to the sea. Can you talk to us about that, please?
Yes, I think we certainly expect that most of Antarctica is not yet receiving the sort of climate warming that's been so dramatic in the Antarctic Peninsula, and that may be partly due to slowly fading out effect from the seasonal ozone hole in Antarctica, which has tended to have an influence on Antarctic climate. But if the air temperature rises, it's still going to be very cold, but clearly warmer air can hold more moisture, and so everybody does expect that snowfall in Antarctica will increase. And I've seen the studies that suggest that itself accelerates the flow to the ocean. I think that the increased melting of ice shelves is likely to be a far bigger effect in that. Some early studies that we did nearly 20 years ago showed that if you think it's going to take 1,000 years to establish some new equilibrium, then whether you get 2 meters or 3 meters of sea level rise from Antarctica would depend on whether you had factored in this compensating effect of higher rates of snowfall in Antarctica. Because obviously snowfall in Antarctica is really like putting sea level rise away in the bank, and it can take hundreds to thousands of years to flow back. So it's certainly an important compensating effect, but I think the dynamic response, really driven by the ocean, is going to be the biggest influence on Antarctic change.
Right. It's hard for people to understand that it's not that the warming air temperature is going to melt these things from above. It's that the hotter ocean reaching in is going to weaken them from below. Isn't that the story?
That's certainly what we're seeing, particularly because some of the areas that are changing the most drastically at the moment in the area of Antarctica below the Pacific Ocean, in the area called the Amundsen Sea. This is almost about as far south as you can actually sail a ship before you actually bump into Antarctica. And yet it's there where the air temperatures are still well below freezing that we're seeing these biggest changes. And it is one of the places where we know that the warm ocean currents that circulate normally at some distance around Antarctica do manage, by virtue of currents and the topography of the continental shelf, that do manage to come inshore there. And it certainly shows the power of ocean water. One shouldn't actually underestimate the effect of warmer air temperature, at least in the more northerly parts of Antarctica. Warm air temperature and summer melting on the surface of these ice shelves is actually certainly playing a big role in the rather than dramatic disintegration over the matter of a few weeks of a few ice shelves in the Antarctic Peninsula back at the end of the last century.
Well, all along we've talked about West Antarctica and East Antarctica as though they are almost separate parts of the puzzle. Are there any generalizations you can give us about what is happening in these two halves compared to each other?
Yeah, it's interesting that in some ways they do fit being described as if they were two different worlds. The observational evidence we have for the loss of ice from Antarctica, because we can actually directly measure the disappearance of ice from space, either by seeing the change in the fall of the ice surface, telling us that the ice is getting thinner and flowing off, or by actually weighing the ice sheet from space. We can tell that West Antarctica is where currently most of the action is. Overall in East Antarctica, very little change, maybe some slight overall increase, although this area around the Totten Glacier is one of the hot spots in East Antarctica. It's perhaps the place where there's most consistent ice loss going on there, which is one of the reasons that we're so interested. But so in terms of the current response, there seem to be two separate worlds. However, what we're realizing, as we discussed earlier, is in fact parts of East Antarctica, in terms of this very deep bedrock well below sea level and deep channels connecting that out towards the ocean, some of that is a lot more like West Antarctica in terms of its setting than people previously thought. It could well be that it's simply a matter of the response of the forcing, and perhaps in East Antarctica in the future, we might see phenomena that we'll recognise from what we presently see in West Antarctica.
Dr. Warner, are we able to say whether in total Antarctica is losing mass, staying the same, or gaining ice mass?
Yeah, it's very clearly losing ice, and there's pretty good evidence that that rate of loss is accelerating. That comes from these direct observations that really, as I say, putting the ice sheet on the scales and saying, yeah, you're losing weight. So that loss in West Antarctica is outweighing slight increases or stability in East Antarctica. The experts think that in maybe another year of observations, we'll be in a better position to sort out the influence in that process of seasonal variations, if you like, particularly in snowfall. It's quite impressive that looking from space you can actually see, this actually is very much easier to see in Greenland than in Antarctica, but you can actually see in Greenland the seasonal arrival of the big dumps of snow that come in the winter and the greater loss of ice over the summer. And there's actually that annual cycle quite visible. In Antarctica, things are not quite so clear because things are happening on a grander, slower scale. But people are convinced that, collecting observations for longer will allow us to sort out trends without the confusion of seasonal variations.
Well, the key question with sea level rise is always when, and we discussed this a little bit, but do we have enough science yet to really know how much Antarctica will add to the world's oceans during this century?
No, we don't. It's actually the biggest unknown in trying to predict what sea level to expect. And in fact, the IPCC felt they couldn't even give you an opinion about how much the response might vary according to what sort of global warming track or trajectory we found ourselves on. So it's quite serious unknown. And the other thing about Antarctica is there is a lot of ice there. We slightly touched upon the fact that the ice sheet is sitting on this well below sea level bedrock. One of the other complications is that in several areas, West Antarctica is the paradigm for this, I guess. The bedrock just gets deeper and deeper and deeper as you go towards the interior of the ice sheet. And so there is a possibility, and in fact it's titled the Marine Ice Sheet Instability. There is a prospect that if the grounding line is starting to move inland, it'll just keep on going and it'll continue to retreat and you'll continue to lose ice until you finally manage to have your ice sheet catch itself on some bedrock features and so on that stabilize that retreat process. So how much it'll give in this century is rather uncertain, and the prospect is that it could keep on giving, and it could keep on giving even if we stabilize the world in some warmer state.
Yes, I think NASA scientists came out and said that the process is unstoppable. Yes,
the recent analyses of what's happening in this Amundsen Sea region with a couple of the big glaciers there, like the Thwaites Glacier, is they feel they've got enough bedrock profiling there, again using this ice-penetrating radar system, to say they can't see any obvious new anchor points that would stop the retreat that has currently started. So when the IPCC said you might get more sea level rise, we can't really quantify it. If we start to initiate this marine ice sheet collapse, it's possible we're seeing the first stages in that already.
Please tell us about a couple of projects the Antarctic Climate and Ecosystems Cooperative Research Center has on the go.
Right. Well, we've actually just had our centre renewed last year, so we've set out our stall with what we think are the most pressing issues in the climate ecosystem area. And so we have a major overarching project on this ocean-driven evolution of the Antarctic ice sheet, and really all these matters we've been talking about today. Our activities range from voyages with, we had a voyage with the Australian icebreaker to the front of the Totten Glacier just this January, where they did actually verify the first time anybody's got this close to the calving front of the Totten ever. Pack ice just opened and the captain was brave enough to sail in there and get some measurements. And so we do know that the warm water is actually arriving there at the front of the cavity, and with this work that's just been published led, I should say, by Jamin Greenbaum from the University of Texas in Austin. We now think that we can see the channels by which that warm water is going to make its way under the ice. So the Totten remains a major interest for us. We've already been doing ocean circulation model studies to try and explore how the ocean circulation moves underneath ice shelves and also how the resulting meltwater affects the external ocean. And now that we've got an improved picture of what the space underneath the Totten looks like, we'll be going back to run those models there again. And the big step forward is to start coupling the dynamics of the ice shelves and the flow of the grounded ice behind with the ocean, because obviously if you're melting the bottom of the ice shelf, changing the geometry of that changes the world in which your ocean model is living. And so we need to couple those systems together eventually. That'll become part of an entire sort of Earth system model. We'll be doing more survey work with our area geophysical surveys, exploring in lots of places the bedrock in Antarctica. Used to be the most poorly understood part of our whole planet. We know the vicinity of the deep ocean a lot better than we know what's underneath part of Antarctica. So that work will be continuing. And we've also got field programs on the Amory ice shelf. This is East Antarctica's biggest ice shelf and Antarctica's third largest ice shelf. And we had a field program there with oceanographic instruments that were deployed by drilling through nearly 1,000 meters of ice shelf and deploying instruments in the ocean underneath in order to find out what's actually going on in these rather inaccessible parts of the planet.
Hearing you talk, it almost sounds like we're trying to discover some things about Mars. It's a mile deep beneath the ice. It's very difficult to peer around. We don't know a lot of things. It's amazing that we're finding out as much as we do.
Yeah, it's when we started this ice cap survey from Casey Station, and I should say we go out 1,000 kilometers and back on each flight there. That was an area where there were maybe 2 ground-based survey lines in the whole previous 50 years of Antarctic exploration, and we would gather that much data in an 8-hour flight. And so, yeah, we're slowly shading it in. There are still a few places which we hope to get to where if you were a 15th century map maker, you'd probably be writing "Here be dragons," because we still don't have a detailed bedrock there. But at least the map is being filled in.
From Hobart, Tasmania, we've been talking with Dr. Roland C. Warner. He's a researcher with Australia's Antarctic Climate and Ecosystems Cooperative Research Centre. Dr. Roland, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been a pleasure.
I'm Alex Smith, reporting for Radio EcoShock. We are back after the online Grow Your Own Food Summit with the organizer, Marjorie Wildcraft. Marjorie, remind us just once again where you grow your food and the way you operate your homestead experiments.
Hi, Alex. Yeah, I live in Central Texas, and my homestead is a research center dedicated to finding systems and developing systems for you to be able to grow half of your own food in a backyard-sized space in less than an hour a day. Pretty tall order, but we're working on it.
Last week you talked about getting your husband and son on board with aquaponics. Is it necessary to have everybody in your family on board with this prepper gardening style right from the get-go?
No. In fact, I'd say that the vast majority of people who consider themselves preppers, they have a reluctant spouse or reluctant children, and so they just, go and do what they do anyway. With growing your own food, what I would recommend is just get started, and the family actually starts to get involved in it. One of the best ways to get them on board is when you're harvesting. That's one of the most delightful times, especially with kids. I can give you some of the best vegetables to grow for kids that'll make them almost be out there in your yard treating it like a snack bar. Those little cherry tomatoes that grow so well in the summertime? Those kids will be out there fighting for them. And in the cooler seasons, those sugar snap peas are delicious, or strawberries. If you've got some really tasty food out there, those kids will be out there playing with it. And that's one way to get them involved with it without it even being a prepper thing, right?
Tell us about your aquaponics setup. What have you done there?
Yeah, we built one, and I believe it's like 30 feet long by about 12 feet wide, and it has a 150-gallon fish tank, and, I had always initially avoided aquaponics because it's a little bit high-tech. It's going to involve motors and pumps and things like that, which actually ended up being the attraction for my husband and my son. That's the reason they like it, is it's kind of high-tech. I've really been impressed with those systems. They do require energy, so you're going to be needing some solar power or wind power or the electrical grid, which is another reason we had avoided it initially. We were initially always developing our systems for a grid down or ultimate sustainability type of situation. But we ended up going with this. I have to say that it is definitely easier to grow food in the aquaponics system. Our first year of experiments are that way. It does require a little bit more watching. For example, if that pump goes out, your fish only have so long before they're going to need oxygen and die. So it does need a little bit more monitoring like that. But on the other hand, it really is easier. And part of that here in Central Texas, it was protected from the wind. It was protected from extremes of heat and cold. The plants just grew better. The fish created the waste that fed the plants, and it worked really well. It's a good system.
Yeah, it's kind of a self-enclosed system in a way, but it is tricky and technical, as you say. I've been avoiding it so far. Let's talk about permaculture. That's another major contender for truly sustainable agriculture. Have you experimented with a food forest? And by the way, what is a food forest?
Well, I love food forests, and I have to say this is my particular favorite way to grow food. The idea of a food forest is you create an area that mimics nature in that you plant trees and bushes and vines and herbal layers, and every plant in there is edible or medicinal or beneficial in some way. And if you look at a forest does not need any tending, right? You go to a pristine forest and the trees there, they drop their leaves, they're self-mulching. They've learned how to manage the water that comes to them naturally. They don't need to be irrigated. And they all, there's still some production of food, and animals and wildlife live in it. So what we try to do is create systems like that and mimic it and try to maybe have it slanted with a little bit more benefit toward us. They're more investment in time getting up and started because a lot of your fruit and nut trees are not going to start producing for 5 to 10 years. But once you get them established, they are much, much less work than annual gardens.
We all know gardening can help seniors maintain their mental and physical health much longer, but eventually we may not be able to handle the heavy work. How can we set up a garden to keep going with very little effort?
Well, that's it exactly. That's why food forests are it's a real retirement plan, unlike Social Security, which we never really know how long that's going to be around, right? So a real retirement plan is going to be to plant a food forest or to plant a small orchard right now while you've got the strength and energy to have that going. And then, in your later years, it's a lot easier to just harvest apples than it is to be planting, doing all the work of the annual garden.
Let's talk about prepping for pests. I built 2 big raised beds out of some used lumber, but I put a wire lining on the bottom to keep out the moles that seem to love my rich garden soil. What else can we do to encourage pests to stay out of the garden?
Well, one thing is to first of all, just to have really good, rich soil will help reduce your insect problems. For moles and gophers, personally, I have a big problem with that. We have a lot of sand here, and I've been experimenting with using castor beans as a mole repellent and a gopher repellent, and so far it seems to be working very well. In fact, castor used to be known as the no-gopher plant. One of the realities of having a beautiful food source like that is you are going to need to have some fencing or some protection from everything else that loves to eat your food, like raccoons or squirrels or rabbits. So a good fence around your garden is just a reality.
Well, ours is about 7 feet high, and then we dangle little pieces of cloth and colored foil on the top of that to keep the deer from jumping in. But for the rest, we always plant a little extra for all the creatures that are going to eat out of your garden, whether you like it or not.
That's a very good practice. We rely very heavily on 2 dogs to do a large part of the protection from the predators here. In fact, one of the dogs is even really good at spotting overhead aerial hawks and barking and letting everybody know when the hawks are nearby. And I find them invaluable. They work all night. They mostly sleep all day. I don't feed them very much because I give them the butchering scraps from when we do butchering, and then they also just get whatever table scraps we don't eat, and then they find what they can. They'll dig up gophers or catch a rabbit here and there. So they don't really require a lot of input, and they do a lot of work.
When I was doing part-time farming in eastern Canada, the only chemical I used was rotenone. It's made from ground-up roots of a South American plant, and Robert Rodale used it. I had to use it for the Colorado potato beetle. If you have a big planting of potatoes, we had a couple of acres, there's no way to squash all those bugs by hand. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a lot of work to manage a couple of acres of potatoes. We all need to use as much organic processes as possible. The classic thing with something like a couple of acres of potatoes is to pay the kids. It used to be a penny a bug, and you'd have them go through the rows, and then they'd dump out their bugs, and you'd count them, and you'd pay them. That used to be the way to get rid of the Colorado potato beetle.
Could still work today if you get some neighborhood kids going. Well, last week you talked about not needing refrigeration or freezers, that we could just munch our way through the fresh food season. But I have to admit, there are times when we got so much food, more than we could give away or trade even, that we needed to freeze some, at least until we could catch up to our canning and drying. I like canning and dehydration because they don't depend on the grid staying up. What about you?
I do too. I'm a huge proponent of that. And fermentation also as another method of food storage. By the way, at the Homegrown Food Summit, we have one presentation by Kendra Lynn, who will be showing you how to do water bath canning and how to do pressure canning. And what I love about it is, some people have a fear of those big pressure canners because they are these big, intimidating things, and there's these stories of them blowing up and stuff, right? There's no longer a concern about it. They've built them. They're now safe. But when you see Kendra, who's this slight and beautiful woman, just handling that machinery, you'll go, oh, I can do it. And we also have Wardy Harman, who's going to be doing a whole thing on how to preserve food by fermentation, as well as the health benefits. It turns out that fermented foods really help your gut